Hey everyone, Boardgame Brody here with Meeple Mountain. I was sent a prototype copy of Imperial Publishing's first game coming out very soon called Red Outpost. Red Outpost is a worker placement game where everyone can move and control all the workers in the game. This, however, doesn't mean that this is a co-op game, as it definitely is not. But you will be controlling these workers of an extraterrestrial communist settlement that has started on the moon. Players will share everything, including all resources produced in the game. Players will earn points for keeping workers productive, shipping goods on time, and keeping the workers happy. The winner is the one who breaks through and becomes the only true leader by their contributions and their abilities to keep the workers happy. You can see that there are 12 locations here on the board to visit, and they all do a certain action, and in some location the actions are different depending on the worker that visits there. Here are the 6 workers: the miner, the shepherd, the fisherman, the farmer, the bureaucrat, and the commissar. These workers don't only have their own meeple, but they all are listed on the right side of the board so you can keep track who has influence on each and how happy they are. Let me explain each worker placement spot, and as I do this I will explain additional parts of the game as they connect with each other. But before I do, let me explain this track here. The game starts in the morning and progresses to the day, then lunchtime, then the day again, and then ends in the evening. One full rotation is a day or a round in the game, and the game lasts 2 days or 2 rounds. In the morning phase, each player will do one action, moving one of the workers who all start in the barracks. When moving a worker on a location, players will place one of their discs on the worker that they have chosen to move. This indicates that they have placed orders for that worker. As the game progresses, other players will compete to gain majority for each worker, and whoever has the majority at the end of the round claims the points shown on the mood track. This means that you could score a maximum of 4 points, but you could also score -2 points. In a way, while you're playing the game, you're playing an area control battle when selecting which worker to move in each phase of the round. But let's get back to the morning phase. So there will be 3 randomly placed morning tokens that block these locations for the morning only. So you can visit any of the 12 locations minus these 3, minus the field kitchen, as that location is reserved for lunchtime, and the barracks, which is only open in the evening. So now you're down to 7 locations to start the game off. After each player has moved one worker, each player still in the barracks will increase their mood by 1. At the end of each phase, the first player token will then be passed clockwise. At the beginning of each phase, all workers will be stood up that show that they can be activated again during this phase, and when used, workers are placed down, showing that they have been activated and the other players can't activate them again. But also that another player can't visit a location that one of the workers has already visited. During the first half of the day phase, you will take turns moving workers until all 6 of them have been activated. Just so you know, if you're playing a 4-player game, then the number of turns taken will not be the same for every player. But it will eventually round itself out and each player will have the same amount of turns. During lunch, you will move 1 worker, and at this point the field kitchen is also open for more than just 1 worker. The second day phase is just like the first day phase, except for now a different player has the starting player marker. In the evening phase, 3 evening tokens will be flipped up to block those locations, and the barracks will now be available. Each player will have 1 turn moving just 1 more worker. So depending on the number of players in the game, each player will have used 6, 7, or 9 tokens, taking the same number of actions. Okay, I got off track. So let's get back to each location on the board. Let's start with the 10 locations you potentially could visit in the morning. Let's start with the pasture. So here the worker will lose 1 mood unless they are the shepherd. Then you will produce 1 wool. All resources are placed in the storehouse for all players to use. Why would producing resources be something you want to do? Well, for each resource you produce, you'll be moving your token 1 space on the production wheel. And once your counter passes the last space, you will gain 2 victory points and a crystal. Now in the game, whenever there is 3 or more resource cubes of the same color in the storehouse, you will remove 3 of them, placing 2 in the supply, and 1 of them on the leftmost empty space on that resource's export track. That player will then receive the points printed below the newly occupied space of the export track. You can now see why producing resources for everyone might or might not be a good idea for you. The farm is similar. All players who go here will lose 1 mood, unless it's the farmer, and then you will produce 1 wheat. Now the mine is a little bit harder work, and if the worker visits here and is not the miner, then they will lose 2 mood and produce 1 coal. But if it's the miner, then he loses no mood and then produces 2 coal. The last resource spot is the lake. So if the worker is not the fisherman visiting the space, then that worker will lose 1 mood and you will draw 1 card, receiving the reward listed. If the fisherman is the one going fishing, then he will not lose any mood and he will draw 2 cards and takes the rewards from 1. Now the odds of catching something are, as you can see here, nothing are on 3 cards, 1 fish is on 2 cards, and 2 fish and an increase of mood is on 1 card. Now pay attention to what cards are drawn because they are discarded. So next time a worker visits here, they will draw from the cards left in the deck. Whenever the cards run out or whenever the fisherman visits the lake and decides he wants to reshuffle, all cards can be added back, shuffled, and used again. At the labor camp, the worker loses 2 mood and produces 1 wheat, 1 wool, and 1 fish. Since all resources go in the storehouse, let's talk about it next. You can either discard any resource in the storehouse to make 1 worker gain 1 mood and another lose 1 mood, or you can discard a resource to gain a crystal, or you can pay a crystal to add any 1 resource to the storehouse. When visiting the spaceship, the worker loses 1 mood, I'm guessing because they remember back home and how things used to be, and then you will draw a card from the deck and receive the reward depicted on the card. Now, there can be nothing on the card, there can be a specific resource, or there can be a resource of your choice and possibly a crystal. At the beer house, the worker will gain 2 moods unless she is the commissar, who would lose 1 mood instead. Then they can pay 1 crystal to make any 1 worker gain 1 mood, and another to lose 1 mood. At the administration building, if the bureaucrat visits, you gain a crystal. If any of the other worker visits, then the bureaucrat will gain 1 mood, and you may move 1 influence disc of another player's from 1 worker to another. At the palace of the Soviets, both the visiting worker and the commissar gains a mood. The commissar herself gains no mood when visiting the palace. You can then place 1 crystal on a space of your color to contribute to the construction. At the end of the game, whoever donated the most crystals gains 4 points, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for third place. The field kitchen is only open during lunchtime, and the worker that visits here will gain 1 mood. Lastly, the barracks. The worker will gain 1 mood here and can only be moved here during the evening phase. After a round is completed and the first player token is passed as usual, the player with the majority influence for each worker will gain the points shown on their mood. This can be negative or positive. In a tie, all players gain or lose the full amount of points. All mood markers will then go back to their starting spaces, and all influence discs will be returned to the players. Players will keep all their crystals in front of them, and the resources will stay in the storehouse. All workers will be returned to the barracks, and the phase marker will start again in the morning phase. A second round begins in the same way, and after that, final scoring is done. Points will be scored for the contribution of crystals in the Palace of the Soviets, and 1 point will be awarded for 2 crystals unused in the game. The player with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. In addition to the gameplay that I've mentioned already, you will start the game with 2 cards that give you abilities that no other player has. 1 card will be a special location where you can receive some perks, and the other is a worker that breaks a specific rule. Take advantage of these bonuses because other players will be doing the same, and when done in the right time and the right way, you will be more productive. Now, this is a great game, especially if you enjoy worker placement, which I know many people do, including myself. I like the idea that every player is using all the workers to fight for area control for each worker on the right side of the board, but also trying to match up your needs on the board and performing your action to benefit you most with resources or changing happiness ratings. I love how the area control aspect is not like a map thing, but it's actually choosing certain workers to activate that puts you as the head honcho in charge. Which means if they are not at all happy, then you're in charge and you get the negative points. But if they are super happy, well, that's you and you get the points associated with it. The happiness points at the end of the game is a really big chunk of your points. But if you don't watch other players who might be focusing more on the resources, then they can sneak some big points on the production wheel combined with the export tract. The game can be very different every time that you play depending on the players and how they play the game. Everyone will be trying to keep everyone in check, but then at times there might be a runaway player with a majority on a particular worker, which is fine. Then you can let them use their turns activating that worker while you spend your turns getting majority from all the other workers. If they spend all their time on one worker, then they will get some points. But if you just barely get majority on a lot of workers, then you will get a lot of points. I also like if one player does have the majority of a certain worker, well, then you can just use that worker that they have the majority in, and you can go place them somewhere and get minus happiness, which won't affect you because, well, you're not the player with the majority. And then you can take the benefits of the worker placement spot without worrying about the negative happiness. Really, the game turns into all players kind of staying close together in the majority, which makes it very intense as no one knows which majority they will win. And players might make some moves to change the happiness of these workers to change what worker that you want the majority in. Also, your 2 ability cards can help guide you to the way that you should play by using those abilities to take some advantages over the other players, but then also taking advantage of opportunities on the board, yet still keeping all the other players in check. The game is only 2 rounds, which seems a little weird number of rounds, but it does help keep the game from going on and on while doing the same stuff. So 2 rounds is actually just right, I think. I love the card flipping when you visit the spaceship or when you go fishing. You know, it brings a little fear into the game, but it also can reward a player when visiting there. Also, after a player visit, it gives, all players more information of what still might be in the deck left for them. And you need to keep your eyes open for that to know if you should be visiting those spots because your chances are a little better, or maybe you should stay away from them because your chances are worse. The art and the components are done very well. This is a prototype version and it pretty much feels and looks like a finished product. So kudos to Imperial Publishing as they are doing their job to make sure that the final version is even more amazing than this one right here. If you like Euro games that have some meat on them but still plays under an hour, then this would be a great game to have and play. Red Outpost by Imperial Publishing is still on Kickstarter, so go check them out. Again, this is Boardgame Brody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around and check out some other board game reviews to see what you might want to get to the table. Now, let's see, which one of you workers want to do some hard work in the mine?